The content on the Untold Tales channel is protected by copyright. Unauthorized use may result in legal liability. The brink of despair, the phone rang just as I was stepping out of the sterile zone of the laboratory. The muffled, vibrating sound made me flinch. The number was unknown. I rarely received calls during work hours, and with this project, I had made a conscious effort to keep all external contact to a minimum. I answered, already sensing trouble. "Call Foster?" The voice was low, hoarse, unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "Take a look at your screen, doctor." A chill ran down my spine as the phone buzzed again, notifying me of an incoming photo. I opened it. Gloria and Samantha, tied up, their faces bruised, lips split. Samantha. She looked so small, so helpless, her usually bright blue eyes now clouded with fear. "If you do everything right, they live. If not, you'll watch them die." My fingers clenched into a fist as I struggled to steady myself. "What do you want?" "You know what we want, Kyle." "Chimera 7. I held my breath. Chimera 7, the laboratory's latest development, a classified biochemical weapon so dangerous that even its existence was top secret. It worked at the molecular level, breaking down in the air and penetrating through skin and respiratory pathways. The first symptoms appeared within minutes: violent convulsions, followed by paralysis, and then blood clotting inside the veins. Absolutely untreatable. The compound was unstable, could be activated remotely, and a single drop had the potential to wipe out an entire city. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "That's not your concern, doctor. Your job is to get us the sample. You have 24 hours. I can't just walk out with it. You're a genius. You'll figure it out. And if you try anything, the next photo we send will be far worse." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. "How do I know you'll let them go after this?" "You don't." The line went dead. I stood there, gripping my phone, feeling the panic begin to consume me. They had backed me into a corner where no right choice existed. They wanted Chimera 7. They had my family. And I had 24 hours. The clock had started ticking. I stood in the narrow corridor of the laboratory, gripping my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My entire world had shrunk to a single image: Gloria and Samantha, battered, bound, defenseless. I was no hero. I had never been one. I was just an ordinary man, a scientist, a chemist. My life had always revolved around microscopes, test tubes, and complex equations. I had no experience negotiating with kidnappers, no idea how to plan an escape or track down criminals. I didn't know how to fight, how to shoot, or even how to maneuver a car at high speeds like they did in the movies. All I ever wanted was a quiet life, to love my wife, to watch my daughter grow up. But now they were threatening to kill them. My body trembled, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shatter my ribs from the inside. I stumbled into the laboratory restroom, locked myself in a stall, and tried to steady my breathing. What was I supposed to do? My first instinct: call the police. Dial 911, send them the photo, beg for help. But I exhaled sharply, staring at the screen. If these bastards had managed to get to my family, then they knew everything about me, my job, the laboratory, my routines. They hadn't chosen me at random. Calling the police was the first thing anyone in my position would think of, which meant they had already accounted for that possibility. I imagined myself dialing the number, getting connected to an operator, and then seconds later receiving another message. Perhaps a video of Samantha. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing the thought away. No, I couldn't take that risk. Even if the police decided to intervene, what could they do? Track my family down from a single photograph? Unlikely. Trace the call. The kidnappers had surely used a disposable phone. Check security cameras? That would take too much time. And I only had 24 hours. I looked at the photo again. Samantha. She was only 8. Just yesterday, she had been laughing, telling me how she wanted a puppy. And now, I slammed my fist against the wall. No police. I had to do this myself. But how? How could I, a scientist, possibly steal a sample of one of the deadliest biochemical weapons ever created from one of the most secure laboratories in the country? I had no answer. I sat there in the restroom stall, pressing my back against the cold wall, my mind racing to find a way out. Every option seemed catastrophic. Every scenario ended in failure. But I knew one thing: I couldn't let them kill Gloria and Samantha. I had to steal Chimera 7. I had worked in the lab for 10 years. I knew every security protocol. Entry into the sterile zone required retinal scanning, fingerprint identification, and a personal access code that changed every 12 hours. Surveillance cameras monitored every movement. Armed guards patrolled the corridors, especially near the restricted storage sector. It was suicide, but I had no choice. I left the restroom, splashed cold water on my face, and took a deep breath. The first step was figuring out how to bypass security. Taking Chimera 7 through a normal exit was impossible. Every employee underwent biometric screening and detection scans upon departure. But there was one loophole: the emergency protocol. In the event of a fire, the laboratory would automatically go into lockdown, but high-risk biological samples would be evacuated in hermetically sealed containers to a secure containment facility. If I could trigger the evacuation sequence and intercept the capsule before it reached its destination, I might have a chance. A slim one, but a chance nonetheless. Preparation. I returned to the laboratory, forcing myself to appear as if nothing had happened. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, but I knew that any sudden movement would draw suspicion. Before making my move, I needed access to the server room, where the emergency protocol systems were managed. Normally, only engineers and a handful of senior staff had clearance, but today, luck was on my side. One of the engineers, Mark, was working on a system update. I approached him, feigning the need for assistance with file access. "Hey, Mark, I need to check something in the specimen security system. I'm having trouble accessing the logs. Can you help me out?" He barely glanced up, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "No problem, Kyle. What file do you need?" "The activation log for emergency protocols. I need to review data from the last few tests." "Got it. Give me a second. I'll grant you access." He entered a code, and within moments, the security interface appeared on my screen. I had only one shot at this. Quickly, I located the section controlling emergency sample evacuation and discreetly altered the settings. Now, if I triggered the fire alarm, the Chimera 7 capsule wouldn't be sent to the secured containment unit. Instead, it would be rerouted to the technical corridor area with minimal security presence. From this point on, speed was everything. Inferno unleashed. Evening fell, and only the night shift remained in the laboratory. I sat in my office, eyes locked on my computer screen. The security feed showed that the guards were patrolling the opposite side of the complex. Everything had to happen in 5 minutes. Taking a deep breath, I typed in the activation command and pressed enter. A piercing alarm blared through the facility. Red emergency lights flashed along the walls, and an automated voice echoed through the corridors. "Fire detected. Evacuate immediately." Panic erupted within seconds. Employees rushed from their stations, their confusion evident. The security team split up, moving to inspect the supposed fire zone. I knew I had no more than 2 minutes before someone noticed the system failure. Bursting into the hallway, I weaved through the chaos, heading straight for the technical sector. The entrance required a restricted access keycard. I swiped minor indicator. Access denied. Damn it. I had forgotten that scientists weren't authorized for this area. A mechanical hum caught my attention. The containment tube was already lowering the Chimera 7 capsule. Time was slipping away. Footsteps echoed behind me. A guard was approaching. I had no choice. Spinning around, I sprinted toward the nearest emergency exit, yanked open the control panel, and slammed my fist against the override lever. The fireproof doors slammed shut with a thunderous clang, sealing off the corridor. That bought me 20 seconds. I turned just in time. The capsule had landed. I jumped onto the metallic platform, grabbed the case containing Chimera 7, and clutched it against my chest. Now, I had to get out. Rushing toward the emergency exit, I blended into the flood of employees evacuating the building. The moment I stepped outside, my phone vibrated. "You did it, doctor. Now hand over the package." I stood there, struggling to catch my breath, holding the deadliest substance on the planet. I had Chimera 7, but I knew this wasn't over. The phone buzzed again in my pocket. I didn't need to check. I already knew who it was. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone. The caller ID was hidden. A deep breath. I answered. "Did you complete the task, doctor?" The voice was cold, flat, devoid of any emotion. "I have Chimera 7. Where's my family?" My voice was tight, but I kept it steady. "Don't worry. They're alive. For now. Now listen carefully. There's a dumpster behind the old hangar on 3rd Street. You come alone, place the case inside, and leave. Once it's secure, you'll receive the coordinates to retrieve your wife and daughter." No. Silence. "What?" "I'm not handing over Chimera 7 until I see Gloria and Samantha. I'm not an idiot." The moment I give you the sample, you'll have no reason to keep them alive. You're playing a dangerous game, Kyle. I don't have a choice. Fine. Come to the location. But if you try anything stupid, you know how this ends. Horn blasts. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my frantically pounding heart. The old hangar on 3rd Street. I knew this place. An abandoned industrial zone, rarely patrolled by the police. The perfect spot for a deal and for murder. But I had no choice. I arrived at the designated location precisely at 11 p.m. Night had enveloped the city in a dense shroud of darkness. The moonlight barely pierced through the heavy clouds. The hangar stood as a grim silhouette against the dark sky, and beside it a rusted dumpster where they had ordered me to place the case. I clutched the container with Chimera 7 tightly, as if it were my last hope. I'm here. I called into the darkness. Where is my family? A figure stepped out of the shadows. A man in a long coat, his face concealed beneath a hood. Put the case in the bin and leave, doctor. No. I want to see Gloria and Samantha first. You are in no position to make demands. I felt movement behind me. Damn it. Cold metal pressed against the back of my head. Do as they say, Kyle. The voice was low, hoarse but familiar. I clenched my jaw. I had been played. Slowly, I placed the case on the ground and raised my hands. Good boy, the voice behind me sneered. Now step back. Slowly, I began retreating. Then, at the last moment, I spun sharply and drove my elbow backward. The gun barrel jerked to the side. There was a gunshot, but the bullet vanished into the night. I grabbed my attacker, twisted him around, and struck his face. He staggered but didn't fall. I reached for his mask and tore it off. And then I froze. John Keelan, my friend, a close family friend. The man I had gone through university with, the one we celebrated our children's birthdays with. He looked at me with an expression of cold detachment, but for a split second, something flashed in his eyes. Regret? John, my voice trembled. What the hell are you doing here? He remained silent. I saw that he was ready to strike again, but I couldn't move. This wasn't just betrayal. It was John who had betrayed me. You pathetic fool, Kyle. John's voice was cold, dripping with disdain. He looked down at me, his gun aimed at my chest. I still couldn't believe it. John Keelan, the man I had trusted. I always knew you were slow, but I didn't think you were this fucking stupid, he sneered. You really thought you could outsmart us? He let out a dry, contemptuous laugh. You were a pawn from the very beginning, Kyle. And now, you're going to pay for your stupidity. He raised the gun and pulled the trigger. A shot. A sharp burst of pain seared through my stomach, and I collapsed to the ground. John stepped forward, grabbed me by the collar, and dragged me toward a dark alley. I was too weak to resist. The ground was cold and damp, dirt clinging to my clothes, but I no longer cared. I was dying. John threw me against the wall. You know why I'm enjoying this so much? I gasped for air, pressing my hand to my wound. Blood poured between my fingers. Because you're a worthless nobody, Kyle. Your whole life, everything was handed to you. Perfect grades. A stellar career. A beautiful wife. A daughter who adores you. And me. His face twisted in rage. I worked my ass off my entire life. I was smarter than you, but the professors always held you up as the golden boy. I was just as good as you, but I had no family, no success, no respect. I deserved it all, but I got nothing but scraps. And the worst part? You never even noticed. You lived in your fucking bubble of happiness, while I had to watch and fight the urge to vomit. I stared up at him, trying to understand. Was this always the real John? Or had he only just become this monster? Now everything is going to change. He leaned in, his voice a whisper. Gloria and Samantha? Did you really think I would let them go? Oh no, Kyle. Now that we have Chimera 7, your family is doomed. My heart clenched in terror. Please, I whispered. Don't hurt them. Too late. Rage. Pure, primal, all-consuming rage. I lunged forward, throwing every ounce of strength into my attack. John wasn't expecting it. I seized his wrist, twisting the gun away, but he recovered fast. His knee drove into my stomach, igniting a fresh wave of agony. But I refused to let go. We fought. I could feel my strength slipping away, but surrender was not an option. If I died, Gloria and Samantha would die too. John turned the gun and fired. A searing heat tore through my back. My body refused to obey. I staggered back and fell. Shit. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me was John's irritated voice. I tumbled down, sliding over the damp earth until I crashed into the bottom of a deep pit. Pain erupted through every inch of my body. I couldn't move. Somewhere above, John cursed. Well, to hell with him. Footsteps receding into the distance. He thought I was dead. I closed my eyes. I had no strength left, but I was still breathing. And as long as I breathed, I would return. I had no idea how long I lay in that damned hole. Pain had become a part of metal, searing, all-consuming. The wound in my stomach burned, and my back felt as though a red-hot nail was lodged deep inside. Every breath sent waves of agony rippling through my body. But I was alive. John had made a mistake. I couldn't die. Not yet. The wind howled somewhere above. The night was cold, the air thick with dampness and decay. In the distance, I could hear the barking of dogs and the faint hum of traffic. I wasn't far from the city, yet still deep enough in this abandoned wasteland that no one would stumble upon me by chance. I gritted my teeth and forced myself to move. A sharp pain in my side nearly dragged me back into unconsciousness, but staying here wasn't an option. Gloria. Samantha. I saw their faces before me, heard their voices. I wouldn't let it end like this. Summoning every ounce of willpower, I began to crawl. My fingers dug into the wet earth, my boots slipping in the mud, but I pressed forward slowly, stubbornly. Every inch was an unbearable struggle. It felt like I had been moving for hours before my fingers finally closed around the thick root of a tree protruding from the earth. I pulled myself up again and again till something solid met my feet. I was out. My strength was gone. I collapsed onto my knees, gasping for air. The world swayed before my eyes. My head spun, but then I heard it. Footsteps. Someone was approaching. I forced myself to lift my head. A flashlight's beam seared into my vision, silhouetting a figure against the light. Shit. Who the hell are you? The voice was rough, wary. The man stepped closer, and the flashlight revealed his face and skin, stubble, tired eyes. I tried to speak, but only a hoarse rasp escaped my throat. Damn. You're hurt. The man crouched beside me, pulling out his phone. Hang in there, buddy. I'll call. I grabbed his arm. No. Not an ambulance, he frowned. What? They can't find me. He studied me for a few seconds. Who's are they? It doesn't matter, I coughed, the taste of blood thick in my mouth. Can you help or not? The man hesitated, then cursed under his breath. Fine, screw it. Hold on. He hoisted me up, slinging my arm over his shoulder, and started dragging me forward. I don't remember how we got to his hideout. Somewhere along the way, I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying on an old but clean couch, covered in coarse gray fabric. The room was small, modestly furnished, yet oddly cozy. A wooden table, a cabinet, a weapon rack in the corner. The air smelled of tobacco and antiseptic. My wounds were bandaged. The pain had dulled slightly. The man was sitting beside me. He noticed I was awake and let out a short chuckle. You're one tough bastard, you know that. I tried to sit up, but he stopped me with a gesture. Don't rush it. If you drop dead, I'll have to drag your ass out of here. I took a closer look at him. Who are you? You can call me Vic. Kyle. Well, Kyle, now it's your turn to talk. Who the hell tried to kill you? I closed my eyes. The last few hours flashed through my mind. A friend. Vic raised an eyebrow. Damn, you've got shitty friends. I let out a bitter chuckle. Now I know. Something tells me this isn't just a friendly dispute. I said nothing. Vic stood up, shoving his hands into his pockets. Listen, kid. I don't know what kind of mess you've landed yourself in, but you've got two options. Either you get the hell out of town and forget all this ever happened, or you stay and finish what you started. His gaze locked onto mine. What's it gonna be? I didn't hesitate. I'm staying. Vic smirked. Figured as much. He pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, lit one, then tossed something my way. A phone. Call someone you trust. We need to figure out how to get you your revenge. I clenched the phone in my hand. Gloria. Samantha. I was coming back for them, and I wouldn't leave John a single chance. I was damn lucky Vic had found me and pulled me out of that hole, but I couldn't afford to hide out forever. The moment my condition was stable enough, I started moving. I knew I didn't stand a chance alone. John and his men were armed, experienced, while I could barely handle a gun. Hell, my entire life, I'd been an ordinary guy, a scientist, not some goddamn mercenary. If I wanted to save my family and destroy those bastards, I needed a team. Hardened professionals who knew exactly what they were doing. But men like that didn't work for free. I needed money, a lot of it. And I knew exactly who to call. Kevin was one of the few people I could trust. We had known each other for over a decade, and he had helped me back when I was just starting out. Kevin was sharp, cunning, and above all else ruthlessly greedy. But he never asked unnecessary questions, and that was exactly what I needed right now. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. The dial tone stretched on painfully long until, at last, a familiar rough voice answered. Kyle? Didn't expect to hear from you. What's the occasion? I need money, Kev. Silence. I could hear him exhale before he spoke again. You're not the kind of guy who asks for handouts. What's going on? It's a long story, and now's not the time for it. I'm in deep shit, Kev, and I need 50 grand. Fast. 50. He let out a short laugh, but there was no amusement in it. Christ, Kyle, do you even realize what you're asking? That's not pocket change. I'll pay you back. Oh yeah? And what guarantee do I have? You think I'm just handing out that kind of cash, even to an old friend? I was ready for this. I'll leave something valuable as collateral. Like what? I tightened my grip on the phone, bracing myself for what I was about to say. I have a watch. Kevin scoffed. Don't make me laugh, Kyle. A watch. What? Am I supposed to pawn it? It's not just any watch. A Rolex Daytona. Limited edition. Solid gold, platinum movement, collector's item. Only 50 were ever made. It's worth more than your car. A pause. You're serious? Dead serious. I heard him whistle softly. Now that's more interesting. Where the hell did you get it? A gift. Long story. That part was true. My father had given it to me years ago, one of the few things he ever left me. I treasured it, but my family's lives were worth far more. Kevin let out a low chuckle. All right, Kyle, you've got yourself a deal. The money will be ready. Meet me in an hour at the old hangar on 13th Street. You know the place. I know it. And Kyle, if you screw me over, I'll come for you myself. Got it. Got it. He hung up. I exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of my nose. Now I had the money, but the price I had paid was far greater than a luxury watch. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. I arrived at the old hangar on 13th Street a little ahead of schedule. The place had been abandoned for years. Rusted shipping containers, shattered windows, the air thick with the scent of damp metal. I parked, killed the engine, and exhaled, my grip on the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Inside me, rage churned. It didn't fade, didn't cool, it only grew stronger with every passing second, hardening into something cold, unrelenting. A hunger for vengeance pulsed in my chest, keeping rhythm with my pounding heart. I was not a killer. I had never even been in a real fight. But now I craved blood. Footsteps echoed, and I stepped out of the car without hesitation. Kevin stood by the gate, hands in his pockets, a leather case held close. You're on time, he said as he approached. How much do you need? As much as you've got. Kevin shook his head, unlatched the case, and turned it toward me. Neat stacks of $100 bills lay inside. 30 grand. I could have given you more for the watch, but you know how the market is right now. Take it or leave it. I closed the case without a word and took it into my hands. What are you planning, Kyle? I met his gaze. I'm going to rip their hearts out. Kevin studied me for a few seconds, then smirked. Well, then you're gonna need people. And I know exactly where to find them. Kevin took me to a bar on the outskirts of town, the kind of place the cops knew about but preferred to leave alone. The kind of place where men gathered who had no problem getting their hands dirty. Bouncers, hitmen, ex-military with nothing left to lose. We stepped inside. The stench of cheap alcohol and stale tobacco hit like a wall. Music blared so loud the walls trembled. Kevin walked straight to a back table where 3 men sat. Boys, I've got a job for you. They turned slowly. The first a tall, wiry man, his arms laced with long, jagged scars. The second bald, his neck covered in ink. The third a broad-shouldered brute with cold, dead eyes, a man who looked like he had broken more bones than I could even count. Who's this? The bald one asked, nodding at me. This is Kyle. He's got money, and he needs some dirty work done. The scarred man grinned. Dirty? Huh? That's our kind of thing. I placed the case on the table and flipped it open. I need to find a group of bastards. They kidnapped my wife and daughter. They tortured me, left me for dead. I want them to pay. Every last one of them. The bald one chuckled. You sure about that? You're not a killer. I wasn't. The brute leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. You're talking about revenge. It's always sweet, but it's rarely clean. You ready to get dirty? I met his gaze. Whatever he saw in my face made him smile. All right, kid. We're in. But for this kind of money, we won't just kill them. We'll make them beg for it. Perfect, I whispered. We found him 2 days later. John Keelanth bastard who had once been my friend was hiding in a mansion on the city's outskirts. It seemed that after dumping my body in that pit, some part of him still doubted whether I was really dead. He knew he had betrayed me. He knew I would never forgive him. And he knew there was a chance I might come back. But he didn't know I wouldn't be coming alone. We sat in a van across from the estate, watching through binoculars and thermal scopes. The house was large, 2 stories, wide balcony, tall perimeter fence. Armed guards patrolled the grounds, at least 5 men outside, another 2 by the gates. There were likely even more inside. John was scared for his life. Paranoid bastard, the bald one muttered, spinning a knife between his fingers. He can feel it coming, but he still thinks he can hide. He won't be hiding for long. The scarred man smirked, screwing a suppressor onto his pistol. The brute glanced at me, then at the mansion. You ready, Kyle? It's about to start. I clenched my fists, eyes fixed on the dark windows of the 2nd floor. I've waited too long for this. We started with the gate guards. The bald one and the scarred one moved so fast, the men barely had time to process what was happening. 2 swift strikes, knives slid between ribs, and their bodies slumped silently to the ground. Next was the patrol in the yard. The scarred man moved through the shadows like a predator. His blade flashed in the dark, and one guard collapsed, clutching his throat as blood gushed through his fingers. Another exhaled his last breath as the bald man drove his knife into the base of his skull, carefully easing the body into the bushes. The remaining 2 sensed something was wrong, but they had no time to react. The brute lunged from the darkness, grabbing one by the throat and slamming his head against the stone wall. A sickening crack echoed. The last guard tried to lift his rifle, but the scarred man buried his knife in his spine, severing nerve. She hit the ground, convulsing in his final moments. Blood seeped into the pavement, mixing with the damp earth. The metallic scent filled the air. We moved forward. Inside, there were 3 more. The first never even realized he was dying. The brute knocked him out cold with a single blow before twisting his neck. The second heard something, reached for his gun, but the bald man drove his blade under his collarbone, then twisted the handle and slashed his throat open in one swift motion. The third managed to fire a shot, but the scarred man was faster. The bullet tore into the ceiling as the man choked on his own blood, sliding down the wall. I stood and watched as they worked, as they methodically took out every single one. I saw the blood pooling across the floor, saw bodies twitching in their final spasms. I should have felt fear, shock, revulsion, but I didn't. Instead, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. All clear, the brute muttered, wiping his knife clean on a dead man's jacket. He looked at me. John's upstairs. He doesn't know we're here yet. I took a deep breath. Then let's go upstairs and say hello. As we entered the house, it was quieter than I had expected. The guards had been taken out, and now, it seemed, only the final stage remained. We ascended to the 2nd floor, moving through the narrow corridors. A distorted noise drifted from one of the rooms, the kind of sound one might hear when someone rocks back and forth on a bed. My adrenaline surged, and only 2 thoughts raced through my mind: John and Gloria. When we stepped into the room, I froze. She was sitting on the bed, but this was no dream, no moment of rest. John, that bastard, was on top of her. He stared at me with an expression that made it clear I was the last person he expected to see. Gloria, seemingly oblivious to what was happening, clung to his shoulders, her face twisted in pleasure. I didn't know what to feel. My heart pounded faster than ever before, but not from fear. It was hatred. It was rage, cutting through me like a blade. My wife, the woman who had once been my closest friend, was now like this. With him. With that piece of filth. The mercenaries behind me acted instantly. In the blink of an eye, they had John and Gloria pinned to the floor, restraining them with brutal efficiency. Gloria screamed, struggling to break free, but her cry was stifled by a rough shut up, followed by the mercenary forcing her face into the floor. John, trying to salvage a shred of dignity, glanced up at me. Are you out of your mind, Kyle? His voice was so calm that I nearly shot him right then and there. But I didn't. Death was too easy for him. You thought I wouldn't find out, John? My voice was taut with such intensity that even the mercenaries hesitated. They understood now this was no longer just a personal matter. This was something far worse. John tried to rise, but I closed the distance between us in an instant, seizing him by the throat. He struggled, but I was stronger. What were you thinking, John? That you could take my life, my family, and walk away unscathed? I yanked him closer, not letting go. Let me go. You don't understand. John's bravado faltered, his confidence beginning to crack. It's not what you think. You don't understand. You just don't understand. But I wasn't about to listen to his excuses. I grabbed a knife from one of the mercenaries and drove it into John's side. He shrieked, but I didn't stop. I sliced, without thought, without hesitation, feeling nothing but the pain that had now become a part of me. His stomach, his chest fabric and flesh tearing apart under my blade. He fought, but I struck again and again, until his screams became nothing but pathetic whimpers. You planned all of this, didn't you, John? I hissed, twisting the knife deeper. Thought I wouldn't find you? Thought you were safe? You never knew me. You never understood how dangerous I could be. John howled like a dying animal as I continued. He wasn't as strong as he once pretended to be. He was nothing. Just a slab of meat for me to carve apart. Gloria and I, we've been lovers for a long time. He gasped when I finally paused for a moment, wiping the blood from my face. You never knew. We both decided to fool you. You were just a pawn. Everything you thought you knew it was all a lie. And now you're just a witness to the fact that we sold that weapon to some very serious people. I grabbed him by the throat, squeezing tighter. Blood still poured from his wounds, drenching my hands. You sold us out, I growled, my voice thick with fury and pain. You thought you could just walk away, live your life like nothing happened? No, John. You're going to pay for this. His eyes widened with fear. He couldn't speak anymore, but I saw the tears, the sheer terror. I felt nothing for him. He had always been worthless. You will live only as long as I allow it. Do you understand? He thrashed weakly, but I drove the knife into him once more. Pain became his only companion. His pleas meant nothing. He was still breathing, but he was no longer a man, just a ruined, trembling husk. This wasn't the end. This wasn't closure. This was only the beginning of my revenge. A revenge so intoxicatingly sweet that I couldn't stop. When John finally surrendered, his body limp with agony and fear, I waited. I listened as his blood dripped onto the floor, each drop marking the passage of his suffering. And yet, even in his pathetic state, he still had words left to say. You think it's over? He rasped through clenched teeth, locking eyes with me. You think that I betrayed you? You think that's all? I clenched my jaw, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of a response. It didn't matter. I was ready to hear whatever last desperate lie he had left in him. But then his next words sliced through me like ice. Richard Daly, he always wanted this. His voice weakened, but I heard him. He knew you would come for us. He always knew. And your daughter, Samantha, she's with him. He has her. And he won't let her go until he's sure the weapon is truly deadly. I felt my blood turn to ice in my veins. Everything I knew, everything I believed, it was all a lie. He was telling the truth. Richard Daly, the businessman I had dismissed as nothing more than a player in their deal, was in fact the mastermind behind this vile game. And Samantha, my daughter, my little girl, was in his hands. I loathed myself for being so blind. You think you understand something, John? I exhaled, shifting my gaze to his half-naked body, now utterly broken beneath the weight of my fury. You sold your soul for money, and now you suffer for it. But I will get to Richard. I will find your daughter. You've told me what you needed to before I finish you off. John let out a ragged breath, barely able to lift his head. His face was contorted in pain. You can't stop it anymore, he choked out. They'll destroy me, and your daughter too. They need her. They won't let her go until they get what they want. We're all dead. How all of us? I stepped closer, seized him by the hair, and forced him to look me in the eye. I don't need you anymore, I whispered, and in one swift motion, drove the knife into his gut. He froze, unable to even scream. He had no strength left. But I didn't stop. I kept going, relentless, until I felt his body go limp, his eyes staring at nothing. It had taken too long. And now, I knew revenge was the only thing keeping me alive. I needed to find Richard. I needed to find Samantha. But first, I had to deal with Gloria. Stepping away from John's lifeless body, I turned to my wife, who still sat on the floor, her eyes brimming with terror and disgrace. She knew there was no escape now. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? That you could so easily sell your own daughter and betray me? My fists clenched as I looked down at her. You sacrificed our child for this filthy deal. Her eyes welled with tears, and she opened her mouth as if to speak, but whatever she had to say no longer mattered. You're pathetic, Gloria. So much so that I can barely believe it. Not only did you rob our daughter of her future, you betrayed everything we once had." Her head dropped to her chest. She said nothing. I felt the rage swelling inside me again. "You don't deserve death, Gloria. But you don't deserve the life you're desperately trying to cling to either. You will live in hell every single day until you finally understand what you've done." I turned away, walking toward the exit, leaving her sitting there shattered and broken. Now, there was only one thing left. Find Richard Daly and make him pay. We found him. Richard Daly had barricaded himself inside a lavishly secured laboratory, surrounded by guards, but I knew this was his final stronghold. We had already freed Samantha, and now there was only one thing left to take what we came for. When I found my daughter, my heart clenched. She looked exhausted, but in her eyes, the fire still burned. "Dad." Her voice trembled, but a smile lit up her face. I pulled her into my arms, breathing in the scent of her hair. "It's over, baby. I'm here." She sobbed into my chest, holding on to me as if afraid I would disappear. But there was no time for sentiment. We slipped out unnoticed, leaving the guards in disarray. But ahead lay the real target, the deadly chemical weapon. Infiltrating the laboratory was easier than I had expected. We moved swiftly, taking out a handful of guards before reaching the massive glass containment unit, filled with an almost invisible gas. I knew this was hell in liquid form. I was just about to activate the extraction mechanism when a slow, mocking applause echoed through the room. "So, you finally came," Richard's voice dripped with contempt. I turned. He stood there, surrounded by armed mercenaries, a smirk plastered across his face. "You're nothing, Kyle. You always were. Do you really think you can change anything? You're just a piece of filth crawling toward your pathetic demise." I didn't answer. I carefully scanned the room. Glass walls, red security lights, and there was the emergency lockdown button, just 2 meters away. "You wanted to make sure this weapon was truly deadly?" I asked, feigning surrender. Richard tilted his head, not yet realizing where this was going. "Well then, time to put it to the test." I growled and lunged toward the exit. With a swift motion, I smashed the containment unit with my elbow and, in the same breath, slammed my palm against the button. The lockdown system activated instantly. Steel doors slammed shut, sealing off the laboratory. The guards screamed, scrambling for the exit, but it was too late. The gas had already begun to spread. Richard choked. Panic-stricken, he pounded his fist against the glass, but there was no one left to save him. His skin erupted in sores, his breath came in ragged gasps, and soon he was coughing up blood. The screams grew weaker, his movements more frantic than sluggish. He collapsed to the floor, convulsing. I stood outside, watching as his arrogance twisted into sheer terror. "A worthless man, am I?" I muttered, observing as his body went limp. Richard Daly perished in the very laboratory where he had crafted his deadly weapon. I turned and walked away. Samantha was waiting. A life I intended to reclaim was waiting, and it would exist without him. With Richard dead, the lethal weapon was destroyed along with the man who sought to wield it. The world was safe, and I was finally free together with Samantha. Gloria, my former wife, had chosen her path. She had betrayed us, selling her soul for easy money and power, but neither brought her happiness. Her life spiraled downward: drugs, shady connections, dirty deals. In the end, she died alone, unwanted and forgotten. I felt no hatred toward her, only indifference. I chose to leave the past behind. No more laboratories. No more weapons of death. I bought a house, started a small business, and for the first time, I could live in peace. Samantha had changed, too. The fear in her eyes was gone, replaced by hope. And then Olivia came into our lives. A kind, intelligent, and sincere woman who didn't just become a part of my world, she became a friend to Samantha. They bonded quickly, and soon, laughter once again filled our home. Now, a new life had begun. No fear, no betrayal, just us and the future ahead.